Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. Before we start, I'm just going to inform everyone that there's quite a heavy storm going on where I live right now, so fingers crossed everything will be okay. But suddenly my internet might go out, or the power might go out if like a tree falls on a power line somewhere. So in case I just suddenly drop out, I'll let you know, like probably on Telegram if it's anything major.
Yeah, we have a very long cord with two tin boxes, right, that are stretched out across the country, so that we will use that to maintain communication.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
that doesn't work, we'll have to use the flash gun. But yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Hopefully it's probably going to be fine. It's just nice to get that out of the way just in case. Anyway, how's your week been?
Well, I'm a member of the permanent natalist underclass, so I'm back with the sniffles again. This is like the eighth
Nice.
or ninth, I think, flu or virus or whatever I've had since January. So that's always great. Yeah, but yeah, other than that, I'm in good spirits. Bad weather here as well. Not as bad as it sounds like it is where you live,
Yeah.
but generally fine. So yeah, today we're gonna do like a good pro Trump Patriot podcast and completely ignore Iran and supply lines and just talk about something else like AI, automation, and employment. Sort of maximalist and minimalist cases for what's actually happening in technology in the world today. Hopefully, we can bring some sanity into this space because it's like, well, the more I think about it, like the stuff that is there's, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm thinking more about like the sort of disconnect between the stuff in real life and the stuff that's on the internet, and not in the way
Mhm.
like in the past it was like, okay, the stuff that's on the internet is like memes that are really edgy and people swearing and stuff, and that's not real life. But now I'm thinking more about like, let's take something less controversial, right? Because people quickly get defensive if you bring up some more kind of cultural war stuff. But say entrepreneurship, for example,
Mhm.
it's just like super common to go on any message board or social media or something, and you see guys who are ragging on 9 to 5, and they promote some type of entrepreneurship, right? Be your own boss,
Sure. Yeah.
create your own business, and then you can retire and you keep the money. And they have all these arguments, and you're not a wage slave or whatever. But when you see statistics in most developed countries, like entrepreneurship, actual entrepreneurship is down. Right? It's good. There's like less new businesses being created, just statistically,
Interesting.
than there is. But if you go online, you just would not know that because they just rag on like nine to
Yeah.
five
I mean, with the
culture.
AI thing as well, I've been sort of purposefully immersing myself and just in general for the purpose of the stream. I'm gonna try to bring a lot of the perspective of sort of software development, of course, but this this does pertain to other stuff. I'm just not as well versed into how is it like working with AI software, or even with coworkers who use AI software that isn't for like coding, because that's just not something I've encountered yet. I don't know if you have, but yeah, it's I've purposefully immersed myself in sort of like the sort of you want to call it like cutting edge, state of the art AI coding parts of Twitter, and I think I've seen some stats. It's like people are talking about it all the time, but it's like in reality, in the past month, like maybe 5% of developers across the world have used any like AI tools. It's something insane like that. um, so
Yeah,
yeah, it's going to be a slow adoption process. I think.
That's
Um,
not what they're looking for, right? Because these
yeah,
maximalist guys are going for something crazier. I mean, I can just it's nice to at least have some articles or some clips or something. You don't have to read the whole thing, but you
sure.
can just look at that article that I posted in the private chat, just so people know I'm not making up stuff. If they're not constantly on like Twitter and getting the stuff in their feed the way that I am.
Oh yeah, is it the yearly developers are going to be replaced?
Yeah, so this
Probably.
is
Yeah.
like the CEO of Anthropic who's talking at the World Economic Forum, and this is like the stuff that he's talking about. It's 6 months, no more software engineers. Like our jobs are just done now, and and yes, totally straight faced. I mean, this is a serious company that's like this is what the American military uses like for their AI. Currently, there was some controversy there where they were talking about like maybe they would shaft it for something else, but uh, what is like the main product of Anthropic? I think they make this sort of develop Claude or something, isn't it?
They make Claude,
Yeah,
the AI bot, and Claude Code, which is the CLI tool that I have the most experience with.
yeah.
That's for
For me,
coding.
it's
Yeah,
just it's I've just been using ChatGPT and like Codex stuff, and that's what we use at work as well. So it's like I like a lot of the memes that I see online are about Claude. You know, like
yeah.
make no mistakes. Like you
Because
just keep that in.
Claude has a bit more personality than Codex. Codex is very dry.
Yeah,
I think that's honestly why people are memeing Claude a bit more. Of course, ChatGPT used to have a personality, but people got weirdly attached, and it also got a bit sycophantic. So Sam Altman had to sort of lobotomize it a
well,
couple of
good.
versions
I
back.
guess good for him, but I'm probably using it less because it is less sick. I hate to admit that, but I ask ChatGPT to be to try to reality orient me, but again the problem is that the AI doesn't actually have a real body, a real consciousness or anything. So it's not really about reality orienting. It's just it interprets that as just be contrarian or something. Just like if
Right.
I say something, keeping me honest is not just like search the internet for databases to confirm what I'm saying. It's just like okay, just make a counterpoint every time, even if the stuff I'm saying is 99% factually correct, then it has to make like a counterpoint to it.
Which is also
Uh,
not
and
very productive,
and
right?
it's not productive. It's just really annoying. Actually, it's like talking to people who feel like they have to say something all the time. They always have to disagree with you or something. That's how I feel, and that's sort of like pushing me away from using it. So I, it's a difficult balance to hit there. But like you don't want to talk to an LLM that you feel like is good because it agrees with you all the time. But at the same time, you want feedback or pushback that's actually rooted in reality and not
So that's
just
kind of the thing that's very difficult. And as far
yeah.
as reading the room, as it were, on AI people on Twitter now, the community, as it were, is really trying to figure out, okay, um, how do we build the guardrails so that you know when the AI just does some bullshit or is just being sycophantic, how do you catch it? And also, how do you make it ask you the proper questions you know, uh, when it's when it suits you, I guess. Like instead of, as you said, just having it be contrarian, because that's just as useless, right? Having these rails in place that makes it ask the correct question at the correct time, essentially, is it's what it's all about. And in my opinion, it just comes down to like managing the context of what you're asking, and that's what a lot of people are working on right now, it seems.
It does help, but it's sort of in the nature of what the thing is. It is just like a statistical machine that guesses
Sure.
words,
And
right?
it looks at, in the sense of coding, right? It looks at the code base that you're presenting it, and if the code base that you're presenting it is ass, then what it'll produce is probably going to be ass too. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
Kind of like a junior engineer would. They'll just start copy pasting stuff, right?
yeah, it's, but that, yeah, that's the problem, is that this week, especially, like, as you know, as Twitter is like reaching, we're gonna jump into the singularity with, like, everybody has super high incomes from mega automation or whatever. I'm like having my worst weeks using AI because I've been using it, like, at least
Interesting.
since 2024, quite frequently for most tasks. But I find myself gradually just dropping it because it's you know, I feel like for every second it saves me, it's like making me spend time jumping down useless rabbit holes, so just putting me onto these sort of cul-de-sacs
Hmm.
that it's kind of, you know, I tweeted about this,
You know
but
what? I actually that's the thing where like I felt like the GPT models would always rabbit hole me on like bullshit and when using it in code, especially using the Copilot plugin for Visual Studio Code. But switching over to Claude, that rarely happens anymore. Maybe because it's easier for me to sort of just hit escape and be like, we're not going down that path. Try something else, right? Um, I haven't had that problem after switching to the CLI tools. Strangely enough,
yeah, maybe that's
and
what I should be doing. But it's, yeah, so it's been sort of like these two things, both coding and actually just like you know, sending in applications for like building stuff, housing, like trying to section out. Say you have like you own like a multi-family house or something, and you want to legally section it a little bit differently than it is. So you have to send in forms to the government, and they have to be very specific. So I asked like the ChatGPT to just go through, here are all the forms, here are all the declarations or whatever. I mean, does this make sense? And then it's just giving me like thumbs up. I'm sending it in, and I get it back, and you have to redo this. It's not, you know, appropriate. And I asked ChatGPT again, and it just, I get it sent back every time. So if it, like, in a world where ChatGPT doesn't exist, I've already completed these tasks. Like,
yeah,
I would have just called them the first time or something at the agency, and have them explain to me what they needed, or just read the documentation better or something. Maybe Googled a website from a lawyer that explains this stuff, and I would have just solved this problem. But because it's been just kind of like pushing me down these useless rabbit holes, or all this sort of hallucinatory nonsense, that I'm just wasting a lot of time, and I'm wasting their time as well. Because so that's like the, what they call, what do you call, like the slop layer of code, the slop layer of like legal advice or something.
sure, yeah,
I don't know if you had that story from that the woman who like sued her company or something, fired her lawyer, and then just used ChatGPT for
no,
legal
I don't
advice.
have that. No,
And then she like sent in like 300 pages of legal,
Jesus
you know,
Christ.
orders or something that ChatGPT had written, and it was just all made up. So she had to like pay for, you know, through like
But
200 hours of
yeah, yeah,
lawyers
yeah.
going through that stuff to let's see. I'll see if I can find this story here.
Um, so in the thing with these, I mean, obviously, you know, Dario Amodei has Amodei. I don't know if I can say it, has a vested interest in sort of hyping up his product here. But I will say that I do believe that, you know, in the long run, the prediction is correct in the sense that a lot of the what you would call boilerplate code that is being written is going to be generated by the AIs um, uh, at some point in the near future. I don't think it's in 6 to 12 months. I think we have to do a couple of years. Um, but I think what we're learning is that the piloting, as I like to call it, it's almost like um, I guess actual piloting. You know, you put the autopilot on, but you never trust it if you're if you're flying a plane, right? You're always there to take over at a moment's notice. This will still be highly relevant to have the developer, or I guess engineering oversight, to make sure that what is happening uh, isn't well, Slop essentially, but I can go more into detail about that later. I'm more interested right now in hearing to other stuff because I've purposefully sort of tried to just stick to coding stuff with the GPT models because that's kind of just where I find success. I haven't had a Chat GPT access or even subscription in like half a year. I don't need it in anything I do. Um, so yeah, I'm curious if you have any sort of more real life experience with it that's not coding. Let's see here. This is from The Hill. Let me bring that up. ChatGPT convinced Illinois woman to fire her human attorney. Lawsuit. A federal lawsuit filed by life insurance company Nippon claims that OpenAI's chatbot acted as a lawyer and convinced a woman to fire her human attorney. Nippon says it settled a long-term disability lawsuit with an Illinois woman 2 years ago. Graciela de la Torre signed a full release, and the case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it can't be refiled. However, last year, de la Torre sought to reopen the case. When her attorney told her the settlement was final, Nippon said that she turned to ChatGPT. The company claims the chatbot helped de la Torre draft filings to try to undo her settlement. While she filed pro se, meaning without a lawyer, a judge denied the effort. Following the judge's decision, de la Torre filed a new case, flooding the docket with dozens of filings generated with ChatGPT's help. Responding to the mishap cost Nippon nearly $300,000, according to the lawsuit. Quote, this is actually the first real time I've seen a plaintiff or claimant actually try and represent themselves 100%, and it got through the court system. That's a revolutionary area, Michael Stanishi, vice president of Demand Lane, told Jesse Weber Live. Stanishi is not affiliated with the case, but he said it is, quote, groundbreaking. It has access to nearly infinite human intelligence. What it lacks is the wisdom, right? It's like a child trying to appease and make sure that it's being praised by the end user. So it draws upon everything possible in its ethos and its universe to answer a prompt. And when the end user, Graciela, in the situation, asked a prompt that pretty much had no real secure answer, this child AI imagined an answer and came up with a solution. And so it brings up a broader conversation. Yeah, pretty much. That tracks with what we've been saying about AI so far. So and it's also why I'm trying to be sort of like the tools that we've sort of been using LLMs for in coding are specific to this area, and they might solve problems there. And whenever I see you link the labor market impact, it's like, oh, we're never gonna need people who do business ever again. It's like, well, how the hell do you know that? Because the AI sure as hell can't do anything right now with it, and it hasn't actually been getting that much better at it, as far as I understand. Like it's getting a lot better at coding, but it's kind of like, yeah, okay, sure. If you want to look up like Zillow house price information, like if you someone said if your dad works at the Zillow price factory, he's going to lose his job. I'm sorry, right? uh, but that was never the issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have some jobs that are just, let's say you're a translator or something, or you do copywriting or something for websites, then
Sure.
you've lost your job. But that's already happened. I think that
Yeah.
happened like quite quickly, like just within the first year or something of wide adoption of large language models. Really, that most of those copywriting or like creative writing jobs were just destroyed. I'll take that one, right? But when it comes to other types of jobs here, I mean, you could look at that link if you want to, because that's something that's been put out on the Anthropic website. I've seen these graphics posted
So
online.
just for the viewers,
You-
Anthropic
yeah,
are the is the company behind Claude. Uh, just for your information.
yeah. So you don't even have to look at all the whole of the article, but they have some graphics here that sort of
This one.
like this one. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing what you think about this because it's I don't even know what to say.
That's the thing. It's so hard to imagine. It's one of those things, and I could do this like from um, 1 to 100, sort of talking about programming. Um, but you have the idea that back in like the I'm gonna get my numbers wrong here. So, let me double check. Back in like uh, when was C++ released? In like the 80s?
I think that was in the
Um,
90s, maybe, but
yeah, in mid 80s, and even more when like Java came along. And when you basically got compilers and strongly typed languages, there were people saying that, "Oh, it's over, right? You're never going to be a programmer ever again because everyone's going to basically be able to learn programming, and the compiler is just going to tell them if they got something wrong, right?" Of course, anyone who's ever written a strongly typed language will know that's not the case. The skill was never writing the code; it was understanding what code to write and when. Not necessarily just the you know uh, strict wording itself. And actually, what ended up happening was that because coding got easier or more accessible, the amount of sort of work or money put into it just increased. So the number of programmers actually increased, right? And have increased exponentially every year. And I think that's what's going to happen with AI as well. It's just, is it going to make us more productive? I don't think so. It's just going to change what we do, and it's going to open up all of those projects that people wanted to do, projects that we're going to try to do because now we have the time and the money to do it. The
yeah,
problem
but
is that a
that,
lot of the ideas that people have kind of suck, so it's going to be like a good 10 years of like companies trying out a lot of these ideas that they had on the back burner that's going to turn out to absolutely suck. Um, and the new before we learn that actually our bar for quality is just going to have to increase, right?
well,
That's
yeah,
my prediction.
no, I see what you mean, but yeah, there's a problem there because I said that you're not sure if it's going to make us more productive, but I feel like that, if we're going to make more stuff, that does imply that it has to make us more productive in some sense. I think like
Well,
strongly
okay,
typed
I mean that
languages made
depends on
us,
what you measure in terms of like productive. Like, are we, we're not talking. Well, you could say lines of code, right? That any engineer worth his salt knows that lines of code is a bullshit metric, right? Um, and you can probably put something in finance and in office and admin and say like, oh, this is the metric we're going to use to measure how productive you are, but actually the real the real marker is always going to be quality in the end, right?
yeah.
and and you can't measure that. That's just that's the sum of its parts. um so yeah, we're I say we're not going to be more productive in the sense that we're not going to be producing more things of more quality, right? We're just going to produce more, which kind of sucks, but I think it's just going to
Yeah.
be like an adjustment period.
Yeah, but yeah, but of course you could say, you could have said the same thing about like the strongly typed languages or
Yeah, but
something like
that's
that. It's
essentially
like
what I did say, right?
yeah,
um, so, but it's harder for me to say that about office. Like, I mean, a lot of HR could probably just be automated, to be honest. But that's not. But using my same sort of heuristic there, that means that maybe a lot of HR was bullshit to begin with, right?
yeah. The question is that it can be automated, but is it going to be automated by AI? It's the question. It's like because most of what's being pushed here are these language models, and they're trying to inject those language models into everything. Where it's like you could automate HR with just computer like algorithmic computer systems or
Sure.
something
Yeah.
the same way that Uber is automating like driving. You can have like these kind of standardized systems that uses an app or something, but that's not really AI per se. So the question is, what exactly is AI doing here? Because there's so much money that is being invested into building out data centers to increase
Yeah,
computing
so
power
that's where
for
I'm sort of
yeah.
like confused myself, on things that aren't, software development, etc. Is that so what is the AI gonna do? Like what part of, business is the AI gonna what is the business, right? What is the business part of this? Um, what is the office and admin? What is the like some like actually like you know walk me through the steps. What are the tasks you do for business that
Yeah,
an AI that an LLM can do? I don't get it, right?
I don't know if you have that article I linked in the Telegram chat about
I do have it.
productivity or something.
Yeah.
Maybe you could take a look at that.
Thousands of CEOs just admitted that AI had no impact on employment or productivity. It is economists resurrecting a paradox from 40 years ago. In 1987, economist and Nobel laureate Robert Solow made a stark observation about the stalling evolution of the information age. Following the advent of transistors, microprocessors, and integrated circuits, memory chips, economists and companies expected these new technologies to disrupt workplaces and result in a surge of productivity. Instead, productivity growth slowed, dropping from 2.9% to 1.1 after 1973. So this is what I was sort of getting at is that, you're sort of just increasing the well to draw from in order to do a bunch of weird shit that's outside your purview as a company, right? Um, I can get back to that later with an example of like software later. Newfangled computers were actually at times producing too much information, generating agonizingly detailed reports and printing them on reams of paper. What had promised to be a boom to workplace productivity was for several years a bust. This unexpected outcome became known as Solow's productivity paradox, thanks to the economist's observation of the phenomenon. Like, if you've ever gotten like an AI email from your coworker, you know what this feels like, right? You can see the computer age everywhere, but in the productivity statistics, Solo wrote in a New York Times book review article in 1987. New data on how C suite executives are or aren't using AI shows history is repeating itself, complicating the similar promises economists and big tech founders made about the technology's impact on the workplace and economy. Despite 374 companies in the S&P 500 mentioning AI earnings calls, most of which has said the technology's implementation in the firm was entirely positive. According to Financial Times analysis from September 24 to 25, those positive adoptions aren't being reflected in broader productivity gains. A study published this month by a National Bureau of Economic Research found that among 6,000 CEOs, chief financial officers, and other executives from firms who responded to various business outlook surveys in the US, UK, Germany, and Australia, the vast majority see little impact from AI on their operations. While about two-thirds of executives reported using AI, that usage amounted to only about 1.5 hours a week, and 25% of respondents reported not using AI in the workplace at all. Nearly 90% of firms said AI had no impact on employment or productivity over the last 3 years. 3 years, the research noted. Now, I can probably, like, it's very easy for me to see this part here. That, like, if you ask, like, a CEO, like, how is AI helping you, right? That's probably just like doing some translation or something. Like what, or maybe like finalizing some notes on a PowerPoint, right? Because
No, yeah,
ultimately,
you
like, what
can.
is the AI gonna like? Being the CEO, most of the time is about making quality decisions, right? Qualitative decisions. It's not like you can just. Well, I mean, maybe you could if you wanted to like really run an experiment. You could like feed all the data about about a company into an LLM and see what it spits out, but that's not really what the tool is for, right?
Well, you could ask it for use it as a sort of advisory character, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
unless you
it's
give it like all the data, you're essentially just gambling, right?
yeah. Well, so sometimes you have to make some quick decisions, and you can just okay, I have this problem. Can you suggest paths that I
Yeah,
should go
I
down or
mean, using it
something?
as a sparring partner,
Uh,
right? But then
yeah.
again, you're the one making that qualitative decision at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
Um, that's why you get paid the big bucks, because if you make that decision wrong, like, people get fired, right? Is at least the selling point, right? Um, However, firms' expectations of AI's workplace and economic impact remain substantial. Executives also forecast AI will increase productivity by 1.4% and increase output by 0.8%, sorry, over the next 3 years. While firms expected a 0.7 cut to employment over this time period, individual employees surveyed saw a 0.5% increase in employment. And here's back to like compilers, programming is over. Actually, we're hiring more programmers, and I've seen some stats this week too that we're actually hiring more programmers in the US now than we did like a year ago, so, or 2 years ago. In 2023, MIT researchers claimed AI implementation could increase a worker's performance by nearly 40%, which is insane compared to workers who didn't use the technology. Because then again, like, what is performance, right? Is it just writing emails? Sure. Yeah. ChatGPT can write a lot of emails. But emerging data failing to show these promised productivity gains has led economists to wonder when or if AI will offer a return on corporate investments, which swelled to more than 250 billion in 2024.
Yeah,
AI is everywhere.
that's just as a pause there, because yeah, suck on that a bit. Like $250 billion that's been
Yeah.
raised for like OpenAI. They go do like a new funding round now,
Hmm.
and like, just for the reference, like say a technology that was widely adopted, like AWS, Amazon cloud computing, had like an investment of like 5 billion or something. That's what it took to get that going, which was widely adopted, was profitable, and has, you could argue, made the world of software more productive. I mean, for those of you who don't know, right, this is like the norm before cloud computing was that if you had like a software company or some kind of IT business, then you had physical computers on the premises, like a lot of servers that were just standing there in a room all day working, and you'd have to have people just maintaining them. With these sort of cloud companies, is you were able to just go on the website and just say, I want this much compute power, I want the server, I want this much web servers, this much file storage, and so on, and you just get an API that your software can communicate with it and host it, and you just pay as if you were renting an apartment or something, right? They just bill you over time, and it's very flexible, and you can just sort of completely outsource physical maintenance of computers, and that was sort of a big thing, and you have seen like most companies, if not almost everybody, if it's not like critical military or something, or let's say like medical stuff where you're required by law to have physical computers on premises, uh, anybody who's not like required to have them have more or less swapped onto becoming completely serverless, and this is something that's happened over the last 10 years, and it took like a tiny fraction of the investment that's been put into this AI stuff, right? I mean, I get inflation and like these increase in curves and the way that the economy has changed, but it just kind of, at what point does these LLMs turn into something that can actually carry or justify the $250 billion price tag? I'm still at a loss, to be honest. That's
I
where,
think
like,
I've
yeah,
always sort of like likened the AI investment stuff is, it's essentially like the space race, right? And I actually think, let me adjust for inflation, but I think if you adjust for inflation, you're gonna land on about 250 billion in the US spent on NASA in like 1973 or something. And I mean, obviously everything through, so we're spending more, obviously, but it's not necessarily about, I mean, on the sort of geopolitical level, it's about like getting the first, getting AI to be the first sort of like some sort of military tool, right? Or getting to the AGI singularity first, which,
that's the issue. That so much of this
right,
is rooted in this kind of singularity problem. This is like the
right.
when you get to this price
But
tag,
but you
the
have
only
to
way
remember
you can
that there's also
actually,
like you know, yeah, okay, it's about getting to the moon, but there's also a lot of uh, progress and technologies being, civilization, tech tree being unlocked along the way, right? That's going to benefit other parts of society. I think
I
that's
think people
something.
just, I think either people just struggle to see that. Maybe I even struggle to see that with AI. Is that I think with the space race, it was a little bit more obvious
Sure,
what came out of it.
because one day your shoes have Velcro, right?
Yeah,
Um, but I think a big one with AI is, again, it's very hard for me to see where it's going to go in like things that aren't programming, right? Because I just don't understand what an like the LLM just isn't made for that stuff, right? But I'm not an AI researcher, so maybe some people out there know things that I don't. But specifically in the software space, which in the Western world is so dominant now because so many things are run on software, right? Um, you might see a world where we sort of like have a strange sort of regression in terms of like the way we interface with uh, each other, or I guess between consumer and businesses to businesses. Because currently there's so much effort being wasted in creating useless integrations and interfaces where if you work at a store or something, right? Like let's say you run a store and you have your sort of procurement whatever company that sort of like your grocer, right? That gives you the food. They probably have like a business website or something that you have to log into and browse to find out like how many pallets of milk are we going to buy this week, right? And these are the kind of applications where like, okay, yeah, the grocer actually kind of sucks at building interfaces and building websites, so the experience of getting stuff for your store sucks, right? But ideally they could just expose that data, and then you can talk to your LLM and it'll just go and fetch that data for you. So when you order stuff, it looks entirely different. You don't have to fight a system that hates you because it's made by people who don't understand what you're trying to do. So i- if there's a weird world out there where a lot of the internet kind of just goes away. I'm not sure if we're going to go down that path, but it's an interesting thought I had the other day.
yeah, but then we're getting into like, say like China, for instance, with these super apps, whatever it's called, WeChat or something. It's not
Or
just like,
X, the
yeah, you
everything app.
invested a bunch of money into an app. It's like the government actually requires businesses to expose APIs in a
Exactly. Yeah.
specific way that can be
Yeah.
interfaced with this app. So just the default way that your business is going to exist is that your API is going to look like this, and if it looks like this, then you can use WeChat to interface with your business. And
Yeah.
then you can just use WeChat for everything. But it's because the government has mandated it to be that specific way and made that decision. Just cut through that. And this is like, it's so anti the way the United States works. It's like just pour money into the private sector, and you have these companies that are just siloed, scared of sharing information. They're
Yeah.
scared of
Yeah.
uh, cooperating or anything, because it's all about like competition, who's going to win in the end, and the government doesn't want to pick winners and losers or whatever. It's just like the standard, conservative Republican talking
Of
point.
course. Yeah.
I don't want the government in my economy picking winners and losers or whatever. But
But
so
then again, the
sometimes they
government is
do
also
that.
sort of endorsing in every way it can this AI research. So I don't see it as like a private enterprise at all. Right.
No, and another thing is that let's say we go with that, because I was also that space race metaphor. Like, okay, we're gonna China is kicking our asses in AI or whatever, so we need better AI than China if we're going to win the geopolitical competition for the next century. Just use whatever grandiose framing you like. Well, I mean, currently you have a guy who runs the United States who just decided he was going to bomb another country and just like waste half their arsenal because he thought it was good television, right? And there's no AI involved in that process at all, in like how to allocate this stuff. It's
Mecha
like just
Bentham would never. Yeah.
no, no, it's just some dude who thought it was like just like a boomer. It was almost dead. It was like it would be really good television to bomb Iran or something. I could impress Benjamin Netanyahu. He's going to think I'm really cool if I do this.
Well, boomers
And
never understood AI, so
yeah, but I think they love AI, at least for the funny images or
well,
whatever.
yeah,
But
they love it, but they don't understand it, right?
Trump is not being advised by some AI on how to manage all this money. It's just being thrown out the window. Like, what does it matter if you're making all this sort of intelligence on tap if like the people running your country is like these aged out morons who just act on impulse anyway?
Yeah,
So it's
sure. That's a good question. Yeah.
I just feel like it's the kind of like, what's the point, you know?
Well, yeah, but then it's like, what's the point of doing anything, really, right?
You know, I see what you mean. I just feel like there's a bottleneck here. You know,
Yeah.
there's a
Eh,
bottleneck for
sure,
this
sure.
intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't dispute that, that the sort of vision I presented is the Richard Stallman, free and open software sort of approach, right? Where everyone, just basically makes their own API, and then the LLMs just read what you need, right? Um, but do you want me to keep on reading this one?
Yeah, you could. You sure, unless you have some other program that we should get through. Then
I have more, but it's more programming specific.
yeah,
So, in regards to this, um, let's see here. AI is everywhere except in incoming macroeconomic data. Apollo chief economist Torsten Slok wrote in a recent blog post invoking Solo's observation from nearly 40 years ago. Today, you don't see AI in employment data, productivity data, or inflation data. Slok added that outside of the Magnificent Seven, there are no signs of AI in profit margins or earnings expectations. Slok cited a slew of academic studies on AI and productivity, painting a contradictory picture about the utility of the technology. Last November, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis published its State of Generative AI Adoption report that observed a 1.9% increase in excess cumulative productivity growth since the late 2022 introduction of ChatGPT. A 2024 MIT study, however, found a more modest 0.5% increase in productivity over the next decade. I don't think we should belittle 0.5% in 10 years. That's better than zero, study author and Nobel laureate Darren Acemoglu said at the time. But it's just disappointing relative to the promises people in the industry and the tech journalism are making. Again, it's weird because I think with the proper usage, like people in like software development are like, oh, I'm fucking, I'm shitting out code out of every orifice in my body, right? I'm writing at 100 times speeds, and it's all slop, obviously. And personally, I'm finding a lot more success in maybe going at 2 or 3 times my speed, right? Um, but also then running a really tight ship, and not compromising on this, software principles, which we can get to in a moment. And yeah, is that 0.5? No, it's more than 0.5, and that's why I'm having like a weird. It's very hard. That's why it's so hard for me because I can see personally having a lot of productivity increase for the work that I specifically do, right? But I don't see how that impacts anyone else. Like I don't understand how that helps someone else. Um, because the one tool I have helps me, but it's being like, it's being forced down everyone else's throat, and I don't understand what it's helping them do except write more emails.
yeah. I feel the same way, to be honest. Like you can get an email, get a spreadsheet, but
Yeah, but
it
like,
would be
why are you
interesting
making
to.
like why make the spreadsheet? Why write the email, right? Like that's the real question, right? And lowering the bar of writing the email or making the spreadsheet isn't going to make you more productive. It's just going to produce more stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I started a new job like almost 6 months ago, and there's been some transition of employees, right? But the guy who was the tech manager who hired me, was a bit of a sort of an AI boomer, right? And he was really happy because when I came in, it's like he just sent me a bunch of links to Confluence articles that were like these sort of checklists or something, like what do you call them, like these onboarding documents
Right.
for developers. But it was so obvious that all of this was just AI generated, and it was very kind of generalized stuff. So maybe like he felt like, he was being productive because he could generate long articles that were on board.
It's almost kind of rude, right?
Yeah.
At that point, like getting like I didn't have the willingness or the time to take care and write this, right? So I'm just going to generate some bullshit and make you read it, right? That's kind of rude in my eyes.
Yeah,
Like
my thinking is
if
that
I'm gonna I worked this fall. I spent a lot of time on a big sort of refactoring project, right? That I was leading. And I'll say that we probably did that stuff in half the time because of AI, right? But every step of the way, like every pull request that ever went through, we were like, okay, yeah, this is AI generated, right? Like double check this, triple check it. And every time we made changes, we spent like weeks researching the changes and coming up with a thorough plan. And then we started making changes. And if AI did half of that job, that's fine because that's not the real issue. So it's just like having some real transparency and essentially just respect for your coworkers is is a big part of this. Like don't make them read AI bullshit. That's just rude.
Yeah, my thinking was that if he spent like 10 seconds creating this, I'm going to spend 10 seconds reading it.
Exactly,
Um,
right? And
so
then who benefits? No one, right? Now we just have more words in our company. So that no one reads. Okay, what's the point of that? We're paying for more compute, I guess, because we're storing more megabytes of text. So yeah, it's I guess that can lead into my like just where like software has done this like weird. I made a tweet that where is my Twitter account. So I mean, if I start this is going to get very specific to software development. I know that a lot of people who watch us are probably software developers because that's like the salary man job of of 2026. Um, but I stole like I stole the Oren McIntyre um, format, right? And I wrote periodically programmers reverse engineer the Agile Manifesto and act like they've discovered Atlantis. AI has made some of you do this multiple times in a year. And Hyperion, who might be listening to this, says, I'm very glad I have no idea what you're saying. So yeah, you're in for some learning, I guess. Um so for anyone who's programmers, you probably understand what that means. But my point in general is just that programming as a I guess a profession or industry or whatever you want to call it is so oversaturated at all times with people who are new to it. And especially with AI, a lot of people have entered it that probably shouldn't be here. So we're constantly have to like relearn the lessons from like 20 years ago. And make the same mistakes over and over because there is no canon in software development of like how do you do things, how do you work on stuff. And actually let me just go through a brief history on like sort of software development methodology, if you don't mind letting path.
yeah, no, I'll sit back and enjoy it.
Um, so back in the olden days, now I'm a millennial, so I I've never worked in a company that has explicitly used the waterfall methodology because it's out of style. No one does it anymore, except a lot of people do it. They just pretend that they're not, right? So I have worked for a lot of companies that do this, and it sucks. And I'll explain why it sucks and why, as an industry, programmers and software developers decided to move away from it. So in ye olden days, what you would do is that you'd start a project in a company that we have to sell some software, and usually that meant that someone somewhere had sold some software, right? They'd made commitments. They'd said that, okay, we're going to deliver a thing by a certain date, and you would ideally have requirements, which is pre-prepared specifications about what is the problem that we have and what are we trying to solve, and why do we need software to solve it. And then um, the developers and any sort of relevant people would perform what was called the analysis phase, in which you would draw a bunch of graphs of how you think the code will look like, um, sort of have a big sort of architectural idea of how to structure your software modules or dependencies, either software dependencies or physical dependencies, at times, like say you need a specific server at a location to communicate with. And there would be a design, which is a part of the same thing. It would be more detail on how to implement it. Um, and then you would do the implementation. So that's where you actually start writing code that's going to execute and solve the said problem. Then you would test it, and then you would enter the maintenance phase after you sort of deliver it to the customer. Now, this is called the waterfall method, obviously, because you have to do one step before the next, so it creates this, nice flowing downward sort of effect. The problem is that this kind of sucks. And this kind of sucks because if you get something wrong up here in the requirements phase, but you don't notice until you're down here, you lose the benefit of all of this work. And you sort of have to redo it. So what you're doing in this phase is never correct according to the previous phases, because the reality is that people change and people are faulty. And if you ask someone what they need, on the 1st of March 2024, and you ask them again half a year later, maybe their requirements have changed. But by then you're deep into the coding phase, and it's actually too late to go back and do design and analysis over again. Or as Dick Sledge 69 says, if you get slop in any portion of this river, it goes into the waterfall. Exactly. So what you end up at the end is a horrible mess that is most likely not delivered on time, because when you got the requirements, they were not well enough specified. The analysis phase was time boxed sort of randomly because you didn't really know what you were making because the requirements were wrong. The same goes for the design. The coding might have been time boxed better, but because you'll discover stuff underway, you haven't sort of accounted for this, and so you deliver something to the customer which they don't like, right? They or possibly can't even use, and can't even use in two separate ways. Like a piece of software can be, I guess, can be technically faulty in the sense that when you run it, it doesn't work, like it crashes. But it could also be functionally faulty in the sense that, what the hell is this? I never asked for a login page. Why do I have to log in? I'm trying to add two numbers, right? Um, so what happened was, um, a bunch of fuddy-duddies, as they would be called these days, a bunch of seasoned seasoned software developers got together, and I think it was like around the 2000s, um, at somewhere in the US. I think it was like in Utah or something, to basically hash out like, all right, so whatever we're doing now isn't working. And um, what can we do better? Like, what is the nature of software? How does the nature of software development sort of require us to work? Um, let me see if I can find a agile software methodology. And so what, let's see if I can find the wheel or whatever it is. Here we go. Here's one. Here's a very, very nice one. Now, this has been warped and, destroyed by business people over the years. So essentially, what has come out of it, it's not exactly what they envisioned, but what came out of it is the idea that you work in smaller iterations. So what the Agile Manifesto says is that you should always try to you should always value sort of interactions and individuals and their needs, sort of like the actual users over processes and tools. So you're saying that literally this doing things maybe like this, even as I'm showing on screen now, doesn't really matter if what you're delivering doesn't solve anyone's problems. Um, that's one of the core values. They talk about customer collaboration, responding to change. Being, again, it's called agile, which means that you're quick on your feet. You're not necessarily fast, but it's easy to change whenever something changes in terms of the requirements. That's the whole point. Because when you start working on something, you don't necessarily know if that's going to solve the problem the customer is having. So instead of sort of doing waterfall and praying to the gods that you're going to deliver something, you're just going to assume that, okay, what I start working on, the first week of a project probably is wrong, right? But the sooner I understand that and the sooner I realize that, oh shit, I'm not going to be able to deliver on time, the better it is for everyone involved. So, sorry, you said
I
something?
have some fill-in commentary about the waterfall methods, because some of this stuff is like, if you go to school and you learn about project management, you take a course on that.
Yeah.
You will be introduced to that kind of stuff, and like these agile scrum type methods, there are very few companies that do scrum agile in a way that is explained in the book. But in the same way,
Yes.
I feel like I don't think it's likely that many companies were doing waterfall in the way that it's explained either, and that's maybe the reason that that you've never seen it
Maybe.
in the
And
workplace before.
sometimes, I've worked for some companies as a consultant. You see a lot of weird stuff where, we're agile, but this loop on screen right now is so big that it's essentially just one big waterfall, right?
Yeah, yeah, yes, and
Like it
like
takes so long to get any feedback that it's just waterfall, really, right?
the cases that I've feel like it's actually, it can't be Scrum based. It's say like if you've designed the system in a way where you're relying on either physical things, or you're relying on very old like legacy software, or you're relying on like very proprietary systems that you don't control yourself, that are a part of the product or something, then it's very difficult to have this sort of iterative deploy on demand type schedule, because you need to then send a message like back to that person, like, I need a system to do this, and until the legacy system is updated to do this thing, we can't
Right.
deliver any features. So we're just
Right.
waiting for you to be finished. So it's like, okay, there's no iterative process here. If we're just waiting for you, that might take 2 weeks, but until 2 weeks we can't do anything, because we're waiting for this specific component to be done. And in that sense, it's just kind of impossible to do these kind of 2 week sprints, because you're always waiting for some external system to be finished. I mean, part of the reason why I think these kind of agile methodologies are possible is because, like, you have things like cloud computing, like a competitive marketplace of component-based software, and then you can just swap in and swap out different parts. You can control every part yourself, and make
Well,
quick
I think
changes
it's
to things
important
as you need to.
to note that, what we're looking at on screen here, in theory, has nothing to do with the original Agile Manifesto, right? Talking about Scrum, etc. That is a layer that has been sort of added in terms of like management on top of the agile um, principles, right? Um, and in theory, agile requires no iteration, right? You could just run it purely on a day-to-day basis if that's a requirement of your team, in my opinion at least. um, of course that would be very hard to manage, but it's still possible within the principles. But I think what is the most sort of like core about this is also that it forces you, or it should force you, if you follow the principles within this loop. There, sorry, within this loop here are sort of the software development practices as well, um, which would be like, some would say it's like test driven development, but at least having sort of like test suites that ensure that you can make rapid changes. Having ways of writing code that doesn't, well, not slop, right? Having accountability between your teammates, etc., etc. And that's where a lot of companies fail. Like they just sort of graft whatever this is on top of an already dysfunctional team that isn't following any good software development practices, and then you get what's called like flaccid scrum, I think some people call it, where it's just like, yeah, we're doing scrum but nothing's happening, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
because you're,
I love that term, flaccid scrum. I've
yeah.
yeah, had a lot of that stuff happen to me. So
And that can be extremely frustrating to work with. I spent a lot of my time last year working, this is going to sound incredibly pretentious, but that was the title was given to me, as an agile coach in a business, where I just go, I just basically shadow a team like for 3 months at a time, um, and just be a part of their everyday work, and just like ask questions about like, why did you do that? Why didn't you do this? Right, until you just sort of just like nudge them into working more like this, or following these practices, and all of a sudden Scrum was working, even though I don't like Scrum. I was just like, I just care about like agile principles.
I
I just want
imagine
you
you.
guys to not be retards, right? That's essentially what I'm like going around saying. And all of a sudden Scrum starts working once the developers start working properly, right? It's a magic. It's magic.
So yeah, I just imagine you bringing like a step ladder into the like lunchroom or something uh, with a paper to write on. You're just like, don't mind me. I'm just observing here. Just keep doing what you're
Well,
doing.
honestly, that's what I did. Like, like I just participate in like stand-ups and stuff, and be like, I'm not going to talk. I'm just here to observe, and I'd have a notebook and I'd write down things, and people will get nervous. it was it was a very empowering few months every time I started in a new team, when people were sort of like, oh, he's here to yell at us or something. But I mean, a lot of the teams I worked with were very happy and are doing a lot better because of it. Um, but because it was never intended to be like, you guys suck. It's just kind of like, how do we sort of, how do we notice trends in this team, and the way that the work comes in, and how do we deal with it, and how, just start asking questions, because no one's been asking these questions in like 10 years. So everything has just started to rot, right? Which is a skill I have that I'm pretty good at, to be honest, noticing things. So anyway, we decided that, in general, software developers decided that this was a better way of doing things other than the waterfall method. But the core of this is actually not just, doing planning, design, review, and then having shorter iterations of like maybe 2 weeks. The core of it is actually having a set of standards and principles for your software development practice, which again could be things like doing what is called test-driven development, or at least ensuring that you have a suite of tests that do cover as much as possible of your code base, so that you can make changes rapidly and know that you haven't broken anything else. It is having practices in terms of like teamwork, in terms of reviewing each other's work. It's having feedback when something goes wrong. It gets a little bit into what's called DevOps, when you get sort of like pinged if something goes down, um, things like that. Um, but the core is writing code is easy, maintaining software is hard. And if you listen to sort of the gurus of this era, you have people like Robert Martin, Uncle Bob. You've probably heard of him, Bloody Path,
Big fan. Yeah, I
or
have
Martin
his books.
Fowler. I found out that I have to regretfully inform you that Uncle Bob is, he's on Twitter, which is fine, but he is also politically right wing aligned, which kind of tracks. But he's got like he's the type of like old man who has like he drinks from a cup that says like leftist tears. So
Wow, based.
yeah, unfortunately he's cringe, but he's very
Is he
good
doing like
at software development.
Palestinian tears?
Exactly, yeah. He's a pro. He's a big Israel guy, or I guess he's
Wow.
more anti-Iranian than he's pro-Israel, I guess. Um, so yeah, but I never went to Uncle Bob for political advice. I went to him for software development advice, and I've always also been quite a big fan, mostly because what he's talking about isn't, when people sort of get it wrong in that, like, oh, you have to write tests for every line of code or whatever. But I've always appreciated his sort of wish for like, we're not talking about we're not talking about how you should write software. We're talking about how you maintain software, which is the big question in business, right? It's the business side of it. It's like, how can you be a gardener, right? In your little code park or whatever, to maintain the things around you. And that's the hard part. That has always been the hard part. It is, how do you make code live and evolve and change over like 10 years? Because the code never changes. Like, if you work on a software project and you put it down and you come back a year later, the code itself hasn't changed, but you have changed, and maybe the requirements have changed, and these days probably the dependencies have changed too. So how you deal with that is the hard problem. And AI currently is sort of making a lot of people go through the same thing all over again, which is, like, I'm tearing my hair out, because it's like, we learned this like 20 years ago. Why are we like, people are saying it's like, oh, AI is making us ship too fast. We should be shipping well. And it's literally like an Uncle Bob quote that people are like reinventing from first principles. And it's actually insane that we're sort of back here 20 years later, just, with AI, and making, hundreds and thousands of lines of code. um and I have some examples here, from my Twitter. Let's see here. Share. Um, let's start with this one. This is from the other day, from a guy called Dax. He's some sort of influencer, I guess. He works for Open Code, which is one of the CLIs for AI, and this is something he wrote. Um, this is something he wrote to his team the other day. And he's been obviously very pro AI, talking about like, we're shipping so much more than before. And that's the thing, like, we're shipping a lot, like we're shipping thousands of lines of code features, just pouring out of every part of our fingers all the time. Um, but lately he's been sort of like calming down a little bit on that, and scaling back. And I'm just going to read this. Thought more about some of what I was looking at. This is a message to his team. Basically, you have the following challenges. None of them are new. I just think they're being turbocharged by LLMs. Number one, shipping features not worth shipping. It's pretty easy to prompt a new feature into existence, so naturally the bar for what ships is dropping. But this shouldn't be the case. It should remain high, and we should think very hard about features and if they're worth doing or not. Do not make these decisions solo. Talk to me, Frank, and Jay. So, they have been letting people just put stuff into the code, which to me is insane. Like, who decides what we build is should, I think, almost remain sacred, right? I do not believe a prototype is worth more than spending time on product thinking and understanding why we'd even build it. Again, yes, that's quite obvious to me. Two, when iterating on a feature, sometimes the original design is off and it forces you to do something hacky. Except it's no longer you, the LLM can deal with the hackiness. So our willingness to refactor the original design drops. We should fight this. Leave the code better than you found it. Again, classic Uncle Bob line, right? uh, Three, we need to spend more time cleaning things up. LLMs keep pulling us to ship the next feature, but there's 100 times more value in fixing what we have and improving our process of how we build things. The worst part about all of this is I don't think we're even trading all of this off to move any faster. I think we're moving at a normal pace. Again, back to your productivity, Bloody Path. Every team is probably dealing with this right now because we went from barely using coding edges to using them for every minor change in the past 6 months. And I think they've eroded our ability to delay gratification. We need to find some balance. And here we actually have Uncle Bob responding, saying that what I have found is that the speed and power of AI allows me to adopt austere disciples that drive a system into ultra high quality. That takes a bit of time, but I still get it done a lot quicker, and the quality really eliminates a lot of headaches. I find that as well too. I'm transitioning between jobs. So for the past 3 weeks, I've not had any job essentially. Starting a new one soon, and so I've been intentionally sort of just working in Claude, testing it out, just going like all full vibe coding, as the kids call it. I don't think I would call it that because I'm actually quite interventionist, but what I find is that you're I'm shipping things, but then also I'm sort of building the guardrails around the agents and to sort of reduce errors, but that doesn't make the architecture any better. So I have to look at the code, I have to look at pull requests, I have to review code, and my experience as a software developer lets me sort of like gut feeling or intuit when something is off, right? And it can even just be like, oh, the number of lines in this file is bigger than I would expect, right? And then I'll investigate and maybe I'll see like a function that's like, why is this function that big? Why are we doing this? Right? And why are we doing like that, doing something like this? And figuring that stuff out, like I don't understand how you can do that if you're not already a software engineer, right? Like that skill set is not something you can pick up in like a fortnight just vibe coding. You have to sort of earn it the hard way. But then also, like, once I notice that something is off, I can use the coding agent and just like ask it, like, hey, this is bullshit. Look at it. And it'll be like, oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it'll fix it. But it's not going to figure that stuff out for me, right? I'm the one that's going to have to police it, which is quite a different skill set and at times a bit more exhausting, actually, than just writing code. Because just writing code, you can sort of get this like Zen state, and it can be kind of relaxing at times if you know exactly what you're building. But constantly having to make architecture decisions is very tiring, I find.
Yeah, especially if it's trying to pull you in different directions. I mean, just prompting, make no mistakes, it's not enough.
It is not. You have
And
to you have to police the output.
yeah, you
And
have to
here's
police
a
it.
good one.
And, yeah.
Here's a good one from someone responding to this. This was at an internal talk he gave allegedly. Most of your ideas are bad, actually. And this is we touched on this. That yeah, we can ship a lot, but should we? This is not a junior versus senior argument. A junior engineer with more domain experience might have much better ideas than a more senior one with none. Your ideas on how to solve a problem improve with experience solving the problem. You cannot know your mental model is good before working with it. Correctness only reveals itself through contact with reality. And to me, these are sort of like eternal, or I'm not saying eternal, but it's so strange because to me it feels like this is already a solved problem, right? Um, Agile was in many ways a recognition of this, right? That domain experience is more valuable than engineering experience at times, right? And that you have to have iterations because you cannot necessarily know the solution to a problem before having attempted to solve it. And that goes for the AI as well. Like you can ask the AI to do something, it'll happily produce code. Is it the optimal solution? And is it going to be the optimal solution 2 weeks from now? Probably not, right? Bad ideas often reveal themselves via awkward implementation. That was not the one I wanted. Here we go. Historically, your coding speed and ability to make good decisions go hand in hand. The people most likely to do damage are most limited by their ability to generate code. This is no longer true. In fact, the relationship has been completely inverted. The people with the worst judgment are now capable of generating the most code. I think you said something like Path on Twitter, like you made a tweet about someone at your job making like a 300,000 lines of code project in Codex. And my first thought is like, that's not an AI problem. I just hear 300,000 internal tool, right? I just hear that part of the sentence and I'm already cringing, right? um,
Yeah, you might be mixing it with somebody else. The point I was
maybe it
trying
was
to
someone
make
else.
was a little,
Yeah.
little different, but just for this case, I'll grant I'll grant the point.
No, sorry. It was sorry. No, yeah, I'm mixing it up. This was the guy who, let me see if I can find it. Like some guy who proudly announced that he had built like a Ruby on Rails web app, and it was a blog, and it had 280,000 lines of code for a blog. And it's like, and everyone sort of like reacted to him like, bro, what is wrong with you? How the hell did you get to 250,000 lines of code for a blog? But that's kind of the point, right? Like if you don't know this stuff, if you don't have the heuristics to recognize what is good and what isn't, what is quality and what isn't, and it's not necessarily that you have to be able to spot it, you know, in detail, but you have to have the heuristics to sort of know that something is worth looking into. You're not going to make it, right? And figuring out how to work with these models, placing proper guardrails or harnesses, as they're often called, um, while maintaining these sort of principles, I think yeah, you're gonna see speed gains, but you're not gonna see the speed gain that a lot of people on Twitter are bragging about because they're bragging about it because it looks cool, and maybe if I post that I'm shipping so fast, people will invest in my startup, right? Going back to your point about sort of like uh, influencers talking about entrepreneur stuff, it doesn't reflect reality.
No, yeah, that's it remains that way. It's just I've always thought this way about the internet again, but I don't want to open up too many cans of worms right now. That can be the different episodes, but I think the entrepreneur example is good enough to illustrate what I mean here, because it's like you look at what's being talked the most about and how discussions are clustering in social media and what's actually happening on the ground. It's very, very different.
Yes, yes. Um, but in programming, in software development, I am generally quite bullish on the use of LLMs. But I think a lot of people have sort of claimed that they figured out how to do it far too early. Um, and I think that long term, it's also one of those things where like you have to make decisions for your company about data privacy and stuff like that too. Maybe you'll actually have instances of companies going on prem again, as you said, where you're basically running your own dedicated models. Um, that might be a future.
Yep, I think that's a nice point to round off on.
I think so too.
Unless you were in the middle of something.
No, I was finishing up. I was looking if I can find Uncle Bob drinking from the leftist tears a cup, but
Looks like he's
I
using the
can't.
GigaChad image as the avatar or something.
Yeah, someone. I'm not sure if that's AI generated or if someone painted that. But like, yeah, someone made a Giga Chad avatar of him, and he's using it. Yeah, no, we can look at this first before we leave because we live in the strangest timeline. I'm not even sure if I can show this. Actually, this might get us in trouble with YouTube. We'll try because whoever is running, the Trump admin is running the White House has decided that we're gonna win this war by posting memes. And it kind of just goes on like that, right? And far be it from me to be pearl clutching, but there's something tasteless about this. I feel like even in the worst, you would say, sort of like rah Call of Duty era of American art, I guess it wouldn't glorify sort of like UAV drone striking your enemies in this way. I don't know. Maybe I'm just out of touch with the
This is
Zoomers,
like,
but
it's like really woke to complain about that
yeah, it
or
is
something.
right.
But now, I mean, the only thing I'm feeling is like, it's like a meme in search of a war. If you see what I mean, it's like this account. The
Yeah.
reason that Iran is being bombed is because this account wanted to make memes like that.
I mean,
Uh,
to be fair, they're really
yeah.
good at making the memes.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, but that's kind of the point. They need like content. So it's like, okay, we have to do something now so we can just make more content for the website. That might seem like simplistic, but I feel like there's not a lot of good explanations for what's going on right now. So
they had other stuff as well that I think I've saved. They make like edits of
Security
Pete
infrastructure.
Hegseth. No, I'm not. Ulysses from New Vegas for $1.99 said Operation Epic Chungus. Starting a war for content is actually funny, says Dick Sledge. There's more, but I can't find it now. Like this account posts a lot, but they have maybe if I go on the media tab, it's probably not going to help. There's the wee thing. Oh yeah, he had the bowling thing.
Strike to claim
Again,
it.
sort of the
To claim it. And he got it!
sort of the I'm going to stop that before we get to copyright strike for playing Freebird. Sort of from a technical perspective, they've hired a lot of top meme makers, it seems. But as you said, I think that's the funniest way to put it is that it's they're looking for a war in order to make memes about it. That's really how it feels. Yeah. All right. Enough of this gay banter. I don't think we have anything else to say.
no,
So we'll just say thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening, as always. And thank you if you were in the chat hanging out. We really appreciate that. This was a bit more, we didn't include chat as much as we maybe usually do, but I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about this, so I can sort of just rant. And so I'm not paying as much attention to chat. I'm sorry about that. But of course, we'll be back next week as always. And until then, I wish you a great rest of your day if you're in the US, a good night if you're in the Europe or anywhere else, and a great weekend. Bye bye.
goodbye.